Just before dawn, Fire Station 12 lay in that peculiar, breathless quiet that only comes after a long, hard night shift. Before the city's first morning sirens, before traffic, before anyone in uniform has had a chance to finish their cold coffee. The clouds hung low and heavy, remnants of last night's wild storm still grumbling somewhere in the hills. It was a morning when the world seemed to pause and reset, but something in the air was uneasy, as if danger was only taking a breath. Dana Whitaker, firefighter and paramedic, was used to sensing these things. She stood just inside the open garage bay, her boots still damp from wading through the charred remains of a brush fire hours earlier, the tang of smoke woven through her hair. The rain had mostly died, but a distant flicker of lightning still echoed over the dark tree line, and wind whistled against the metal siding of the station. She was about to head for a hot shower when a sharp, frantic barking cut through the hush. Dana froze. The bark was insistent, urgent even, not the lazy yapping of a stray or the boastful warning of a yard dog. This was something else. A plea. She squinted into the gray dawn, heart pounding. "Whitaker," called Luis Ortega, her shift partner, poking his head out of the kitchen with a spatula in hand. "You hear that?" She nodded, already striding toward the sound. "Yeah, I'm going to check it out." She barely made it past the steps before she saw it, a German shepherd, caked in mud and blood, limping toward the station's porch light. The dog's eyes were wild, the whites stark in the yellow glow. Its muzzle was cinched tight with a filthy shoelace, and clamped between its teeth was a single, bloodied sneaker. It wobbled and collapsed at Dana's feet, tail thumping twice before going still. Dana knelt, hands up, voice soft. "Easy, boy. It's okay. You're safe now." Luis hurried over, spatula forgotten, eyes wide at the sight. Jesus. What happened to him? Dana's mind raced. She saw the battered paw pads, the matted fur, the wild flick of the dog's eyes toward the woods behind the station. She eased closer, carefully loosening the shoelace around its snout. The dog didn't snap. Instead, it whined, a low, guttural sound that made Dana's heart squeeze. Luis crouched beside her, voice low. "You think he's a stray?" Dana shook her head, examining the dog's collar, a faded blue band, no tags, but not homemade. "No way. He's trained. Look at his build, the cut of his fur. Someone took care of him, or used to." The German shepherd, still trembling, pushed the bloodied sneaker against Dana's knee, insisting she take it. That's when Dana noticed a set of initials written in faded marker along the sole. MC. She stared at the sneaker, at the raw hope in the dog's eyes, and felt her gut twist. He's not just hurt. He's trying to tell us something. Luis frowned, glancing nervously at the woods. Whatever happened, it's out there. Should we call animal control? Dana's intuition kicked in hard. Official protocol would have them call animal services, maybe report the shoe, but she couldn't shake the sense that time mattered. Something bad had already happened. Something worse could still be happening. She looked down at the shepherd, now panting, licking his cracked lips, gaze never leaving the tree line. "We don't have time," Dana murmured. "He wants us to follow him." Luis hesitated. "What about the fire line? They said there might be flare-ups." "We can take the risk." "This is a silent SOS, Luis. We can't ignore it." Her words were sharp, urgent. "Grab the med kit and a flashlight." As Luis hustled back inside, Dana gently coaxed the shepherd upright. He wobbled, favoring his front leg, but when she motioned toward the woods, his whole body tensed with new resolve. He growled low in his chest and limped forward, glancing back every few steps to make sure they were following. They slipped into the dense brush behind the station, boots squelching in mud. The shepherd, now christened Axel in Dana's mind, leading the way with renewed urgency. The woods still steamed from the earlier rain, every leaf and branch dripping. It was a maze of twisted shadows and brambles, the air tinged with the scent of scorched earth and pine needles. Every so often a branch snapped overhead, making Dana's heart leap. Luis tried to keep his voice steady. "You really think this dog knows where he's going?" Dana shot him a look. "He's not lost, Luis. He's showing us something. I can feel it." As they followed Axel deeper, Dana caught glimpses of something else in his eyes. Desperation, but also determination. She wondered what he'd seen, what he'd endured, to risk everything to reach them. She thought of the sneaker, the initials, the battered paws. Each detail pressed in on her, a puzzle piece she couldn't fit together but couldn't ignore. A gust of wind howled through the trees, and in that brief rush, Dana flashed back to the worst night of her life. The call from the park ranger, the frantic search for her little sister after she'd wandered off during a hike, the empty, echoing woods. The feeling of helplessness was so raw, it nearly made her knees buckle. She shook it off, focusing on Axel, on the urgency in his steps. They pressed on, stumbling over roots and fallen branches, the forest growing denser, darker. Every sound, owl, crack of twigs, their own labored breathing, felt amplified, pressing in around them. Suddenly, Axel stopped. He lifted his snout, sniffed the wind, and let out a bark, sharper, more insistent than before. He stared at a thick stand of briars ahead, tail stiff, hackles raised. Dana and Luis exchanged a look. This was it. Whatever nightmare Axel had come from, it was just beyond that wall of tangled brush. Luis hesitated. You sure about this? Dana nodded, jaw tight. We're in it now. Stay close. Axel plunged forward, forcing a narrow path through the thorns. Dana and Luis followed, hearts thudding in their chests, flashlights slashing through the darkness. The sense of dread was overwhelming, every step filled with the possibility of what they might find, or what might find them. On the other side of the thicket, the ground sloped downward, and the forest opened up to a small clearing. Axel paused. Then, with a guttural whine, dropped the sneaker and nudged it forward with his nose. He looked back at Dana, pleading, as if to say, please. You're almost there. Dana knelt beside him, hand on his head, feeling the tremor of adrenaline running through his body. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, knowing they were about to cross a line between safety and horror, between routine and the unknown. The blood trail, half hidden in the pine needles, led deeper into the woods, an invitation, a warning, a desperate plea. Dana squeezed Axel's paw. Lead the way, buddy. We're right behind you. And as the first rays of morning crested the distant hills, they stepped forward together, into the heart of the mystery and into danger, trusting a battered hero with everything left to lose. The forest swallowed them whole, every footstep muffled by the thick carpet of damp leaves and broken branches. Dana felt her pulse thudding in her ears, senses straining to catch every hint of movement. The deeper they pushed, the heavier the air became, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. Axel pressed forward, his battered body trembling with fatigue and resolve, nose twitching as he followed a scent only he understood. Luis glanced over his shoulder, sweat beading despite the chill. You think we're close? Dana didn't answer, her attention locked on Axel, whose focus was absolute. The dog's desperation had transformed into something fierce, a silent command to keep going. Dana's boots squelched in mud, memories of her sister's disappearance clawing up from the depths of her mind with every step, flashes of helplessness, the cruel randomness of tragedy. She swallowed hard and pushed forward, refusing to let old wounds slow her now. The trees thickened until even the pale dawn light struggled to reach the forest floor. Ahead, Axel let out a whine, nose pressed to the ground, then barked, a sharp, broken sound that made Dana's heart jump. He darted toward a tangle of ferns and low-hanging branches, then stopped, digging at the earth with frantic urgency. Dana rushed forward, nearly tripping over a root. Luis! Over here! She dropped to her knees, scraping aside leaves and dirt with bare hands, following Axel's lead. The earthy smell of wet ground mingled with something metallic, blood. Her breath caught as her fingers brushed against cloth. She pulled back a layer of leaves and gasped. There, half buried and barely moving, was a woman, her face smeared with dirt, hair tangled with pine needles, a jagged wound across her forehead, oozing dark red. Luis knelt beside Dana, hands shaking as he opened the med kit. Oh my God. She's alive. The woman's eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain and fear. Dana gently brushed the hair from her face, speaking softly. Hey, Can you hear me? My name's Dana. You're safe now. The woman's lips moved, her voice barely more than a breath. There's another one. Dana's blood turned to ice. She leaned closer, trying to coax more from the woman, but her head lolled, consciousness slipping away. Louise, get on the radio. Now. We need paramedics. Search and rescue. Everyone. Luis fumbled for his radio, voice taut with urgency. Dispatch, this is Fire Station 12. We've got a female, approximately late 20s, multiple injuries, barely conscious. We're at coordinates. He rattled off their location, knuckles white around the device. As he called for help, Dana ripped open a bandage and pressed it gently to the woman's head wound. Axel whined at her side, tail low, eyes darting from the woman to the deep shadows beyond. Dana locked eyes with him. Show me, she whispered, as if he could understand. Almost on cue, Axel spun and darted deeper into the woods, barking once, sharp, commanding. Dana's heart hammered. The message was clear. Time was running out for someone else. She looked at Luis. Stay with her. Guide the paramedics in. I'm going after Axel. Luis grabbed her wrist. Dana, wait. What if you get lost? What if... She cut him off, voice flat but determined. I won't. Keep her alive. That's an order. Without waiting for a reply, Dana took off after Axel, her flashlight slicing through the gloom. The woods seemed to press in tighter with every step, trees looming like silent sentinels. Branches clawed at her jacket, but she barely felt them. All she could see was the memory of her little sister's pink raincoat, lost in the undergrowth, the sense of being just one step too late. Axel moved faster now, driven by a frantic energy, yelping as he raced ahead. Dana stumbled after him, lungs burning, legs numb. She realized she was running more on instinct than reason. A deep, primal urge to save whoever waited in the darkness. The guilt of her sister's loss mixed with the hope that, this time, maybe, she could make a difference. She nearly collided with Axel as he stopped short, pawing furiously at a mound of leaves near a fallen log. Dana knelt beside him, pushing aside branches, searching for a sign. Her flashlight beam caught a flash of red, cloth, smeared with dirt. Her fingers dug frantically until she uncovered a tiny sneaker caked with mud, its laces knotted in a child's fashion. Her breath caught. "Oh, God!" she called out, voice trembling. "Hello? Can you hear me? My name is Dana. I'm here to help." A faint sound, softer than a whisper, drifted from behind the log. Dana moved quickly, heart racing. She shone her light into the hollow beneath the trunk and saw her. A small girl, no more than 8, curled into a ball, face streaked with tears, eyes huge with fear. She was bruised and shivering, clutching a threadbare stuffed animal to her chest. Dana reached out slowly, her voice gentle. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl flinched at first, shrinking back, but Axel crawled forward on his belly, whining softly. The girl's eyes widened in recognition. "Axel," she whispered, voice cracked from crying. Axel nudged her hand with his nose, and the girl broke into tears, wrapping her arms around him. Dana felt her own throat tighten, watching the bond between dog and child, the way Axel stilled as if promising he wouldn't let anything happen to her ever again. Dana turned on her radio, her voice steady. "Luis, I found another one. A little girl, alive, but scared and bruised. We need medical ASAP. Repeat, we have a second victim." She knelt by the girl, checking her for injuries as best she could. "What's your name?" The girl hiccuped through her sobs. "Emily." Dana smiled gently, blinking back her own tears. "Emily, you're safe now. We're going to get you home. Okay?" Emily clung tighter to Axel, refusing to let Dana touch her. Dana didn't take it personally. She knew the signs of trauma, recognized the look in the child's eyes, the need for something familiar, some shred of safety. She let Axel be the bridge, letting Emily's trust build in its own time. Overhead, the first hints of sunlight broke through the trees, painting the forest floor in gold. Dana felt a surge of hope as she heard sirens wailing in the distance. Help was coming. She scooped Emily into her arms, Axel never leaving their side. As they made their way back toward the clearing, Emily whispered, "He's been watching me. The bad man." Axel fought him. Dana's heart clenched. There was more to this story, a shadow lurking at the edge of their rescue. But for now, she focused on the miracle in her arms, the battered hero at her side, and the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, you get a second chance to save someone who needs you most. They emerged into the clearing, Luis rushing to meet them, paramedics hot on his heels. As hands reached for Emily and Claire, as blankets and oxygen masks appeared, as questions flew and tears fell, Dana knelt beside Axel, pressing her forehead to his. "Good boy," she whispered, feeling the weight of the night lift. "If only a little. You brought us home." But deep inside, Dana knew the danger wasn't over. The forest held more secrets. And Axel, with his haunted eyes, wasn't done searching yet. The sound of distant sirens faded into the hush of the woods as Dana left the edge of the clearing behind, following Axel back into the darkness. It wasn't enough. Finding Claire, finding Emily. Dana's instincts screamed there was something more hidden in the shadows, something that had clawed its way into her gut and wouldn't let go. Axel moved with renewed determination, pausing every few steps to sniff the ground, ears cocked, body tense. Dana's flashlight beam jerked with her uneven breath, the narrow path ahead dissolving into blackness and silence. Behind her, she could hear Luis's voice on the radio and the clatter of medics tending to the victims. But here, in the cold embrace of the forest, the world shrank to Dana, Axel, and the threat she could almost taste. She kept replaying Emily's whispered words. "He's been watching me. The bad man." Axel fought him. Dana's mind churned with questions and memories, her sister's laughter echoing on the wind, the look in her parents' eyes when hope finally died, the helpless ache of not knowing, never knowing, if she could have done more. A sudden snap of a twig brought her back. She crouched, hand hovering near her side, scanning the trees. Axel halted, hackles bristling, a low rumble in his throat. For a moment there was nothing, just the creak of branches, the drip of water off scorched pine. Then, a faint, chilling echo, the hush of footsteps on leaves, a presence retreating deeper into the woods. Dana's pulse thundered in her ears. She swept her light ahead. "Axel, what is it?" "Show me." The dog darted left, and Dana scrambled to keep up, fighting through a tangle of undergrowth. The deeper they went, the stranger the air became. Close, suffocating, and charged with that particular kind of silence that always comes before something terrible is discovered. Somewhere above, a crow cawed and flapped off through the trees. Suddenly, Axel stopped, nose lifted, ears cocked at attention. Dana's flashlight caught on something hanging from a branch just ahead, a child's shoe, small and pink, smeared with mud and streaked with blood. It swung back and forth as if only recently placed. Dana's heart clenched. There was more than just Emily out here. The sense of dread wrapped tighter around her chest. She called in a whisper, "Hello? Anyone out there?" Her voice was swallowed by the forest. Axel growled and pushed forward, drawing Dana deeper until they reached a small ravine choked with brambles. There, half hidden in shadows, was an old wooden shack, its boards weathered gray, one small window reflecting her flashlight like a dead eye. The place looked untouched by time, except for the faint marks of recent use, a trail of footprints, a faint drag through the leaves, children's drawings tacked haphazardly on the inside wall. Dana pressed her hand to her mouth. The drawings, made with colored pencils and broken crayons, were simple and innocent. Houses, trees, a dog with a bright blue collar, a stick figure girl in a pink dress. But there was a darkness to the way they were crammed together, some torn, others scrawled over, as if someone had tried to erase something they couldn't forget. She stepped inside, Axel at her heels. The air was stale with fear and mold. In one corner she found a pile of blankets, a cracked water jug, and, her stomach twisted, child-sized bindings, a handful of plastic hairbrushes, and half-empty food wrappers from a gas station up the highway. There were fresh crumbs and the lingering scent of sweat and fear. Axel sniffed at the blankets, whining, before suddenly backing away from a trapdoor. half concealed under a threadbare rug. He planted himself in front of it, muscles rigid, head low. His whole body trembled. Dana crouched beside him, gently pulling the rug aside. She pressed her ear to the floorboards, listening. Nothing, just her own breath. She tried the latch, locked, but the wood was old, swollen from rain. With a grunt, Dana jammed her shoulder against it. The trapdoor gave, swinging open on rusted hinges with a shriek. Below, the darkness was total. The stench of urine, fear, and something older, rotten, rose up. Dana flicked her light down. The cellar was empty. No victims, but marks along the dirt walls, scratched with fingernails, told stories of terror and waiting. Her heart thudded. She turned back to Axel, who was now standing by the back door, fur on end, tail rigid. He stared out into the trees, every sense focused on a threat Dana couldn't see. She followed his gaze, pressing herself against the rough wall, scanning for any movement. Then, a shadow moved among the trees. Dana's breath caught. She raised her flashlight and caught the flash of a man's silhouette, tall, hunched, moving fast away from the shack. Axel let out a bark and lunged for the door. Dana followed, crashing through the undergrowth after him, branches tearing at her arms. The man was gone by the time she reached the clearing. Only the trampled grass and a lingering stench remained. Dana spun in a circle, flashlight trembling in her grip, every nerve on fire. She was sure, dead sure, they were being watched, that the silence around her was not just absence, but intent, a warning. You found the prison, but not the jailer. She turned back toward the shack. As she passed the wall, her light swept over another detail, fresh boot prints leading away, deeper into the trees, away from the chaos of rescue, toward the heart of whatever hell had lived here. Dana knelt by Axel, burying her hand in his fur, drawing comfort from his trembling warmth. The dog's eyes met hers, haunted, pleading, but unbroken. She pressed her forehead to his. "We're not done, buddy. There's more." A wave of memories threatened to drown her. Her sister's voice lost in the wind, the pain of not arriving in time. But Axel's steady, insistent presence pulled her back to the present. They had found the prison, yes. They had found a piece of the past, the shadows of those who'd been taken. But the true horror still prowled these woods. As dawn finally broke, burning through the mist, Dana took one last look at the shack and the drawings on its walls. She promised herself, and Axel, that she would not leave this place with more ghosts. Whatever evil lingered in these trees, she would hunt it down. And for the first time in years, she felt the burden of her own grief shift, just a little, transformed not by forgetting, but by the urgent need to keep going, to keep searching, to bring every lost soul home. Dana stood frozen just outside the shack, her chest heaving as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. The adrenaline from the chase, the mounting horror at what she'd uncovered, made her hands shake. She could still feel the echo of the shadow moving through the trees, the knowledge that whoever had done this was out there, watching, waiting. But right now, her job was to search, not to run. She steadied herself, drawing a slow breath, and turned back to the battered German shepherd at her side. Axel had never left the shack's threshold. He sat tense, fur bristling, eyes trained on the patch of forest where the shadow had vanished. Dana reached down, rubbing behind his ears, murmuring, "It's okay, buddy. I've got you." Axel leaned into her hand, but his body remained taut as a bowstring. Stepping inside, Dana swept her flashlight over the chaos she'd uncovered minutes earlier, the bindings, the food wrappers, the children's drawings with their frantic colors and haunted smiles. Her gaze lingered on a set of fingerprints smeared in crayon on the wall, small and desperate. She thought of Emily and Claire, thought of how easily things could have ended differently. There were signs that others had been here recently. Scratches on the floor, a few strands of blonde hair on a pillow, a child's pink jacket tossed in the corner. A sudden thump made Dana's heart skip. Axel let out a low, rumbling growl, then darted to the rear of the shack, sniffing along the baseboards. He began to scratch frantically at a spot beneath a boarded-up window. Dana hurried over, shoving aside a crate to reveal a loose floorboard. Axel whined, pawing more urgently. She knelt and pried up the board. The space beneath was shallow, but just wide enough for a small child. At first, there was only darkness and the thick, choking scent of old dust and fear. But then, Dana caught the glint of pale skin, a trembling hand reaching out. Hey, it's okay, Dana whispered, voice trembling. You're safe now. My name is Dana. I'm here to help. A girl, no more than 8, stared up at her, eyes huge and wild, face streaked with tears and grime. Her hair was tangled, her wrists marked with angry red welts. She wore a shirt 2 sizes too big, likely scavenged from one of the other victims. When Dana reached for her, the girl recoiled, shrinking further into the darkness. Axel crawled forward on his belly, tail thumping softly, emitting a gentle whimper. The girl's eyes darted to him. Recognition flickered. Axel, she whispered. With incredible care, Axel pressed his nose to her hand. She broke then, a sob escaping her as she wrapped her arms around the dog, burying her face in his fur. For a moment, the horrors of the shack faded, replaced by the desperate relief of a child clinging to the only comfort she had known in captivity. Dana blinked away tears, watching Axel's silent guardianship. She reached for her radio, voice shaky but determined. Luis, this is Dana. I've got another child. Alive. Looks about 8. Send him back up in medical. Fast. The girl wouldn't let go of Axel. She clung to him with a ferocity that was both heartbreaking and deeply human. Dana tried to coax her out, but the girl only whimpered and squeezed tighter. Axel whined softly, licking her cheek, his own eyes glistening with the memory of too many nightmares. Finally, Dana crouched low, keeping her voice gentle. Emily, right? She asked. The girl nodded, still refusing to meet her eyes. Emily, you're so brave. Axel is here, and I promise nothing will hurt you again. Very slowly, Emily allowed Dana to wrap a blanket around her shoulders. All the while, her hands never left Axel's back. As Dana lifted her from the crawl space, Emily began to shake uncontrollably. The dog stayed pressed against her side, guiding her out of the darkness as surely as he'd guided Dana through the woods. Back in the shack's main room, Dana knelt beside Emily, examining her wounds. Do you hurt anywhere? Emily shook her head at first, then winced and nodded, cradling her arm. Dana bit her lip, cursing the monster who had done this. She cleaned the worst of the scrapes with gentle hands, all the while keeping up a stream of quiet reassurance. Then Emily spoke, voice trembling. He's been watching me. For days. Not just me, there were others. But I heard Axel fight the bad man. He tried to stop him. Dana exchanged a look with Axel, feeling a shiver run down her spine. Do you remember what he looked like, Emily? Anything at all? Emily hesitated, face screwing up with the effort to remember. He wore a hood. He smelled like smoke. And he had a big knife. She paused, then whispered. Axel chased him away. Dana hugged the girl gently, the weight of it all nearly overwhelming. She realized, in that moment, that Axel was more than just a rescue dog. He was atoning for something, fighting a battle only he understood. There was guilt in his eyes, a silent promise never to let another child suffer. Footsteps crunched outside. The cavalry had arrived at last. Paramedics poured through the shack's doorway, their voices loud in the small space. Dana stepped aside, letting them take over. Emily sobbed as she was lifted onto a stretcher, but she clung to Axel until the very last moment, only releasing him when Dana promised, over and over, that she'd keep him close. As Emily was carried away, Axel let out a long, mournful whimper, his body slumping with exhaustion. Dana sat beside him, laying a hand on his trembling shoulder. You did good, she whispered. You did better than good. You saved her. For a long moment, they sat together in the ruined shack, surrounded by the echoes of children's laughter and fear, the burden of so many lost souls pressing down. But even as the weight threatened to suffocate her, Dana knew one thing with utter certainty. She would follow this trail wherever it led, for Emily, for Axel, for her own haunted past. As the shack emptied, the police tape fluttered in the breeze. Dana carried Axel outside, into the fresh air, where the sun had finally broken through the clouds. He lifted his head, gazing into the distance as if searching for more children to rescue, more wrongs to make right. In his eyes, Dana saw not just pain, but purpose. Axel wasn't running from his past anymore. He was running toward redemption, one life at a time. And this time, Dana was determined to run with him. The sun finally broke through the clouds, slanting between the tall pines as paramedics loaded Emily into the waiting ambulance. The scene outside the shack buzzing with law enforcement and rescue workers. Dana, though physically drained, was running on pure adrenaline. Every fiber of her being was alert, watching Axel pace the tree line, nose twitching, tail rigid, ears flicking at every forest sound. Something wasn't finished. Dana could feel it in the electric air and in the tense way Axel moved, like a guard dog, still expecting an attack. She moved to his side and crouched, watching as Axel sniffed at a set of tracks in the soft mud. Her heart skipped. These were not from any of the rescue team. The imprints were deeper, the tread unfamiliar, heading north, deeper into the woods. Axel looked up at her, pleading with his eyes, as if asking for permission to keep going. Dana scanned the scene. Luis was helping police officers interview Claire, the first rescued woman, who was bundled in blankets and trembling but conscious enough to give her statement. Emily's mother was weeping uncontrollably in the back of a patrol car, the relief and trauma overwhelming. For a moment, Dana hesitated. Should she stay with the victims, see her duty through as a paramedic? Or should she follow Axel, trusting the dog's instincts again? A voice in her head, her sister's voice, or maybe her own from years ago, whispered, "You can't leave anyone behind." Dana nodded to herself, stood, and quietly called Luis over. "I'm following Axel," she said, voice low. "There's someone else out there." "Tell command I'm taking radio channel 3. I'll check in every 5 minutes." Luis, eyes wide, started to protest, but Dana cut him off with a look. He squeezed her shoulder, then handed her an extra radio and a small fire extinguisher. "Be careful, and don't be a hero." She gave him a half smile, then turned to Axel. "Let's go, partner." Axel set off at a trot, his limp barely noticeable now as he followed the muddy tracks. Dana kept pace, her every sense sharp. The woods here were darker, quieter, the ground uneven and littered with the detritus of last night's storm. Every few yards, she caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Just a squirrel, a branch, the flutter of a bird's wings. But her mind kept painting darker possibilities. They moved fast, weaving between trees, down a narrow animal path and into a clearing rimmed by low brush. The air here felt different, still, charged, like the moment before a thunderclap. Axel stopped suddenly, head low, hackles raised. Dana dropped behind a fallen log, scanning the clearing. At first she saw nothing. Then, movement. A man, hunched over, digging something in the dirt. His clothes were ragged, stained with mud and dried blood, his hair matted and wild. He worked with quick, nervous hands, glancing up every few seconds to scan the woods. There was something feral about him, a violence just beneath the surface. Dana's breath caught as she recognized the badge clipped to the man's belt, a K-9 training center logo, faded and battered, the kind issued years ago before the center was shut down in a flurry of abuse scandals. Her mind raced. Was this the man Emily spoke of? The bad man Axel fought? Her body tensed with rage and fear, memories of her sister's case and every unsolved abduction she'd ever encountered flashing before her eyes. She reached for her radio, whispering, "Possible suspect located, north clearing, approach with caution." She moved quietly, circling to get a better view. The man, Walter Lang, according to the faded name tag, was setting snares, crude but effective, the kind meant to catch not animals but desperate humans. Suddenly, a twig snapped under Dana's boot. The man's head whipped up, eyes wild. He saw her, and in a flash, pulled a large knife from his belt. "Stay back," he roared, his voice raw, flecked with desperation. "I'll cut you, I swear." Dana raised her hands, stepping slowly out from behind the log. "Walter, you don't want to do this. Put the knife down. There are people on their way. You can walk out of here alive." he snarled, waving the blade. No cops? No dogs? This is my forest. They made me do it. The dogs, the kids. All of it. They left me here. His voice broke, the rant veering between rage and sorrow. His eyes flicked to Axel, who growled, teeth bared. In a split second, Walter lunged. Axel leapt, intercepting him mid-charge. Man and dog collided, rolling in the dirt. Walter slashed wildly, but Axel clamped his jaws around Walter's arm, refusing to let go. Dana's heart lurched. She saw blood spray, heard Axel yelp, but the dog held on, buying Dana precious seconds. Adrenaline took over. Dana grabbed the fire extinguisher Luis had given her and charged. She swung the canister with all her might, catching Walter in the side of the head. The man crumpled, dropping the knife. Dana kicked it away and wrestled him to the ground, her knees pressing his wrists into the dirt. Axel, bleeding but still growling, stood guard, ready for a second round if needed. Walter sobbed, cursing and pleading as Dana fumbled her handcuffs from her belt and snapped them over his wrists. "You're done!" Dana spat, voice shaking, not with fear, but pure, righteous rage. Within minutes, backup arrived. Police officers swarmed the clearing, guns drawn, voices sharp. Walter was dragged away, still shouting about the dogs and the center. As they searched him, one officer pulled out the K9 badge and a bundle of old photographs. Children, dogs, the training grounds from a lifetime ago. Dana slumped to her knees, exhaustion crashing in as the adrenaline faded. Axel limped over, blood staining his coat, and nuzzled her hand. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "You did it. We did it." As the officers took statements and collected evidence, Dana sat with Axel in the grass, letting the sun warm her face. She knew the story wasn't over. There were still questions about Walter, about the old K9 center, about the ghosts that haunted both dog and handler. But for now, a killer was in custody, a child was safe, and the dog at her side had proven, beyond all doubt, that redemption sometimes comes on 4 battered paws. The wind rustled through the clearing, and Dana looked at Axel. "Come on, hero. Let's get you patched up. There's still more to find." And as they walked back toward the flashing lights and shouting voices, Dana promised herself she would follow Axel's story to the very end, wherever it led, whatever it cost. The ride back to the firehouse was silent except for the steady hum of the tires on wet pavement and Axel's heavy, uneven breathing. Dana drove with one hand on the wheel and the other gently stroking Axel's head, feeling the thrum of life beneath her palm. A life that had risked everything for strangers, again and again. She couldn't shake the haunted look in the dog's eyes as he sat beside her, nor the way he flinched when she tried to examine the fresh wound on his flank from the fight with Walter. "You're okay, big guy. We're almost home," Dana murmured, but she wasn't sure if she was talking to Axel, herself, or both of them. At the firehouse, paramedics checked Axel's wounds and found them surprisingly clean, deep but not life-threatening. As the medics stitched him up in the garage bay, Luis hovered nearby, concern etched deep into his features. "That dog's a damn hero," he muttered, "but he's got ghosts. You can see it every time he hears a siren." Dana nodded, distracted by a memory of Axel's earlier behavior, how he'd pressed the bloodied sneaker into her hand, how he never seemed to rest, always searching, always haunted. After the medics finished, Axel limped to the battered sneaker he'd carried from the forest and lay down beside it, resting his head on the faded sole. Dana crouched next to him, her fingers running along his neck, feeling for a tag or a clue. That's when she noticed it, a faint patch of skin beneath his fur, marked by an old tattoo, barely visible. Scout 14. Her breath caught. "Luis, look at this." She parted Axel's fur, revealing the tattoo. Luis whistled, recognition dawning. "Those are K9 training numbers. That's not a shelter tattoo. He was part of a program, but I thought those experiments shut down years ago. After all, the scandals." Dana's mind raced. She remembered the stories, a private security company experimenting with new methods, pushing dogs past their limits, some handlers disappearing, some dogs turning up feral or traumatized, all swept under the rug when the center closed. "Scout," Dana whispered, looking into Axel's eyes. "That's your real name, isn't it? Axel blinked, his tail giving a single, uncertain thump. There was pain and hope in his gaze. Something almost human, as if he wanted to answer. Luis pulled out his phone, searching for old news articles. Here, listen to this. Marissa Caldwell, head handler for the experimental K-9 unit, vanished during a search mission 5 years ago. They never found her. Her last known location was, get this, the same forest where we found Axel. He flipped his phone around, showing Dana a faded photograph of a young woman with sharp features and a wide smile. Her name was stenciled on her shirt, MC. Dana stared at the photo, then at the sneaker. The initials, MC, scrawled in fading marker. Her heart lurched. It's her shoe, Dana breathed. Axel, Scout, he's been carrying it all this time. The firehouse fell quiet around them as the implications sank in. Axel hadn't just led them to Emily and Claire. He had been trying for years to show someone the truth about what happened in those woods. Dana sat down beside him, the sneaker in her lap. You never gave up, did you? She whispered, voice thick. All this time, you've been searching for her. Axel nudged the sneaker, then lowered his head to her knee, as if finally able to rest. Dana felt tears prick at her eyes. In that moment, their traumas connected, her sister's memory, the years of guilt and wondering, and Axel's stubborn refusal to leave the past behind. Both had spent too long chasing ghosts through the dark. Luis cleared his throat, voice gentle. He saved them, Dana. He saved all of us. A sense of peace settled over the firehouse as the sun began to dip below the trees, casting golden light through the wide garage doors. For the first time, Axel stretched out fully, paws crossed over the battered sneaker, his eyes growing heavy with exhaustion and relief. Dana sat with him, lost in thought, her hand resting on his head, feeling the slow, steady beat of his heart. As night fell, a knock sounded at the door. It was a detective from the sheriff's office, his notebook open, face grim. We've reopened the Caldwell case. The evidence from today, it matches the old file. And the badge we found on Walter. Same center, same year. There are still gaps, but we're putting the pieces together. Dana nodded, jaw tight. Axel, Scout, he was there. He saw it all. He tried to save her. The detective crouched beside Axel, offering a gentle hand. He's a survivor. And now, he's the key to closing this. That night, as everyone else drifted away, Dana stayed with Axel by the firehouse's old brick hearth. She stared into the flames, lost in memories of her sister and the new ache of Marissa's fate. Axel dozed, one paw protectively curled over the sneaker. It felt like a vigil for all they'd lost and all they'd still have to face. A distant coyote howled in the night. Dana listened, her mind racing with the day's revelations. She realized that the search for Emily had done more than save one girl. It had cracked open the past, revealing pain and heroism tangled together, unfinished stories and unresolved wounds. Axel stirred, lifting his head to gaze at her, his eyes shining with something fierce and loyal. Dana reached over, brushing his ear. We're not done, you know. There's more out there. For Marissa, for all of them. Axel's tail thumped once in agreement, and Dana felt her own resolve harden. No matter how tangled the past, no matter how deep the scars, they would keep searching together, dog and human, two survivors in a world that had too often tried to silence them. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, by the firelight, the battered old sneaker sat between them, a symbol of loss, of love, and of hope that refused to die. The following morning broke with a hush over Fire Station 12, as if the world itself was reluctant to disturb the fragile sense of peace that had settled in the wake of chaos. The sky was clear, washed clean by the storm. Dana sat on the front steps with a mug of coffee growing cold in her hands, eyes fixed on Axel, now Scout, sleeping with his battered sneaker and his scars, finally at rest but still alert even in dreams. But the silence was temporary. The old wounds were far from closed, and Dana knew what needed to be done. There were still questions, Marissa Caldwell's disappearance chief among them. She'd spent most of the night digging through public records and police files with Luis's help, piecing together the fragments of Marissa's last day. A K-9 training exercise gone wrong, radio silence, a search party that turned up nothing but confusion and rumors. Dana couldn't stop thinking about that battered sneaker and Axel's unrelenting quest through the woods. When the detective returned, carrying a box of files and a weathered map, Dana felt her pulse pick up. He laid everything out on the old oak kitchen table. We missed something in the original search. There's a section of the forest. Old growth, dense, prone to landslides after storms. We never probed too deep because it was unstable. But I think it's time we try again. And, I think Scout can lead us. Luis nodded, his face pale, but determined. If anyone knows where to look, it's him. Dana glanced at Scout, who perked up at the mention of his name, eyes bright and ready. You up for another run, partner? She asked softly. Scout pressed his head to her knee, tail thumping with a gravity that made her heart ache. There was a weariness in his gaze, but also a stubborn resolve. He hadn't given up for 5 years. He wasn't about to start now. They loaded up, Dana, Luis, Scout, and the detective, driving out to the edge of the forest as the sun climbed. The air was sharp, every detail crisp with the aftermath of rain. When they reached the old trailhead, Dana knelt and let Scout sniff the battered sneaker once more, giving him time to reacquaint himself with the scent, the memory of Marissa, the ghost he'd never stopped searching for. He took off at a steady lope, body tense, nose low to the ground. Dana and Luis followed, boots crunching in wet leaves, ducking under fallen branches and skirting pools of standing water. The further they walked, the wilder the forest became. Tangles of blackberry brambles, moss-draped boughs, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. They moved in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Dana's mind wandered to her sister, how she'd always imagined finding her, bringing her home, how those hopes turned to rituals and memorials when hope finally died. She glanced at Scout, reading the tension in his shoulders, the way he paused every few feet to check their surroundings. Grief had its own language, she thought, sometimes a scent, sometimes a compulsion to never stop searching. Suddenly, Scout halted at the edge of a shallow ravine. He whined, pawing at the earth near the roots of a massive pine tree toppled by the storm. Dana's breath caught as she stepped closer, recognizing the look in his eyes, a mixture of dread and certainty. Luis joined her, voice hushed. This is it, isn't it? Dana nodded. The detective started clearing brush, and together they worked in silence, careful, reverent. The soil beneath the pine was disturbed, loose in a way that stood out even after the storm. Scout sat nearby, uncharacteristically still, his gaze fixed on a spot just beyond Dana's hand. It didn't take long before Dana's trowel struck something solid, plastic, then canvas, then bone. Her hands trembled as she brushed away dirt, revealing a woman's remains, tangled with the remnants of a K-9 handler's uniform and the faded glint of a metal ID tag. Marissa Caldwell. A hush fell over the group. Luis removed his cap, bowing his head. The detective swallowed hard, eyes shining. Dana, heart aching, reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her old compass. A battered silver thing she'd carried since the day her sister disappeared. She pressed it into the earth beside Marissa's remains, an offering, a gesture of connection between the lost and the found. Scout crept forward, pressing his muzzle to the bones, eyes closed, tail still. He didn't move or whine, just sat in silent vigil, as if paying respect, as if telling Marissa he had never stopped searching. Dana blinked back tears. It was grief, but it was also closure, a circle completed, a promise fulfilled. After the detective finished documenting the scene and calling it in, they all sat together under the shadow of the old pine. For a long moment no one spoke. The wind sighed through the needles, scattering cones and old memories alike. Dana thought of the years Scout must have spent wandering these woods, following the same trails, carrying that sneaker in his jaws as a token of loyalty and loss. Luis broke the silence. You know, most people would have given up. But not him. Dana nodded, voice thick. Dogs don't forget, especially not the good ones. He loved her. He couldn't let go. They left the site with care, marking it for forensics, but Dana lingered a little longer. She knelt beside Scout, scratching his ears. "You brought her home," she whispered. "You can rest now." Scout pressed his head to her chest, letting out a long sigh, equal parts sorrow and relief. When they made their way back to the firehouse, the sun was already sinking, painting the world in gold and shadow. That night, Dana sat alone on the back steps, Scout's head in her lap, her compass missing, but her heart a little lighter. She realized that, searching for Marissa, for Emily, for her sister, all these journeys were tangled up together. The pain would never leave, but neither would the love or the hope that somehow, even after years in the dark, it was possible to bring someone home. In the distance, the wind rustled the leaves. Dana looked down at Scout, tracing the old tattoo in his fur. "We keep going," she whispered. "For all of them?" And Scout, tired but unbroken, wagged his tail in silent agreement. The discovery of Marissa Caldwell's remains shook the small town to its core. News traveled quickly. By lunchtime the next day, every diner, school hallway, and firehouse radio in the county buzzed with whispers about the dog who wouldn't give up, the handler who'd vanished, and the evil that had finally been named and dragged into daylight. Dana watched the story unfold from her corner table at the station, coffee in hand, while Scout, no longer Axel, slept at her feet, his fur still patchy from old scars and his dreams twitching with memory. Emily was recovering in the hospital, surrounded by her mother, therapists, and an outpouring of community support. The town came together in a way Dana hadn't seen in years. Meals delivered, cards taped to windows, parents holding their kids a little tighter. Even Claire, the first woman they'd found, began to find her voice again, comforted by the knowledge that she hadn't been forgotten or overlooked. But it was Scout who became the center of the story. For the first time in a long while, Dana noticed hope in people's eyes when they spoke his name. The mayor himself visited Fire Station 12 with reporters and a shiny new collar. "This community owes you, Dana, and especially Scout here," he said, crouching to scratch the old dog's ears. "We'd like to honor him. Make sure no one forgets what he's done." Scout accepted the affection with stoic grace, only perking up when Emily herself arrived later that afternoon. The hospital released her for a short visit, and she marched straight to Scout, dropping to her knees and hugging him tight, her fingers tangled in his fur. "I missed you, Axel," she whispered, refusing to let go. Dana saw how Scout's tail thumped with a gentle, careful happiness. Emily's visits became a daily ritual. Her mother would bring her after therapy sessions, and together they would walk with Dana and Scout in the park, stopping whenever someone asked for a photo or to pet the firehouse hero. It was during one of these walks that the mayor unveiled his idea for Axel's Trail, a path through the woods marked with signs about rescue dogs, hope, and the courage it takes to keep searching. School children decorated the signs with crayon drawings of Scout and the other dogs from the old K-9 Center. The ribbon cutting was a local event, with the press and several TV crews filming as Emily, Claire, Dana, and Scout led the first walk down the new trail. Afterward, at the firehouse, the crew held a small ceremony. Dana stood with Scout at her side while the mayor handed her a shiny brass badge, Firehouse K-9 Guardian. The room erupted in cheers and applause, flashes from cell phone cameras lighting up Scout's confused but patient expression. Dana pinned the badge to his new collar, crouching to meet his gaze. "You earned this, partner. You brought us all home." The recognition wasn't just local. News stations from across the state picked up the story. Dog saves missing girl, uncovers old mystery. There were interviews, video segments of Scout leading the rescue, and a heartfelt feature on national morning TV that brought donations and offers of adoption for the other dogs rescued from the old center. Dana found herself talking about trauma, healing, and loyalty to an audience she never expected. She said, over and over, that Scout wasn't just a hero, he was proof that even after the worst betrayals, loyalty and love could survive. As Scout's legend grew, Dana was careful to keep his life as normal as possible. He was no trophy. He was a working dog who needed quiet walks, time by the fire, and the comfort of familiar faces. Emily visited as often as her mother allowed, and sometimes she'd read stories aloud while Scout lay with his head in her lap, drifting between dreams and the warmth of her voice. Luis and the rest of the crew at Station 12 started seeing more people stop by, not just for emergencies, but to drop off treats, toys, or to ask for advice on training their own dogs. The chief joked that Scout should have his own Instagram, and before long, one of the younger firefighters made it happen. Soon, the page was full of photos. Scout in his badge, Scout on patrol, Scout sleeping in the sun with kids curled up beside him. One evening, Dana sat with Scout on the porch, watching the golden light fade over the town. She thought of Marissa and of her own sister and all the other names written in quiet places, on park benches, on plaques, on trails through the woods. She thought about the way pain could become purpose, the way silence could give way to voices joining together. Scout nudged her hand, looking up with that old, knowing gaze. Dana smiled. "You're famous now, you know. Doesn't change a thing, does it?" Scout yawned and rolled onto his side, content in the quiet, untroubled by fame or the cameras. For him, the world had shrunk to the safety of this porch, the laughter of children, the hand on his head, and the knowledge that this time he would not be left behind. The mayor's plans didn't end with the trail. In a special town hall meeting, they voted to fund a program pairing rescue dogs with first responders and trauma survivors, a living legacy to Scout's determination. The idea caught fire across the region. Other towns called, asking how to start their own Guardian's Path programs. Dana agreed to help, though she insisted it remain about the dogs and the people they served, not the headlines. And on one bright morning, with the air full of birdsong, the local news filmed as Emily, now stronger and smiling, slipped her old hospital bracelet onto Scout's collar. "So I'll always be with you," she said. Dana felt tears threaten, but swallowed them back, proud and grateful in a way words couldn't hold. Scout lay with his badge glinting in the sun, eyes half closed as Dana scratched his ears. Around them, the town bustled with a hope that felt hard-won and honest, a hope built not on forgetting the pain, but on carrying it forward, together. For the first time in a long while, Dana believed in new beginnings. The storm had passed, but its ripples lingered in the lives of everyone touched by Axel's story. In the weeks after Emily's rescue and Walter Lang's arrest, Fire Station 12 found itself at the center of something much larger than a small-town hero tale. There were invitations, letters, and requests from across the country, families searching for lost loved ones, survivors of trauma who saw something familiar in a battered dog's steady eyes, first responders who recognized the quiet ache in Dana's voice when she spoke about healing. It was this growing wave that brought Dana to Portland, standing behind a podium at the National Trauma Healing Symposium. The ballroom was bright and echoing, packed with doctors, therapists, dog handlers, and people who had seen too much of the world's darkness. Scout, newly washed and wearing his Firehouse K9 Guardian badge, lay at her feet, calm as ever. Dana's hand rested on his back as she gazed out at the audience, her heart hammering, but her words coming clear and steady. She began simply. "My name is Dana Whitaker. I'm a firefighter paramedic, but I'm also a sister, a survivor, and, most unexpectedly, a student of this remarkable dog." There was a gentle laugh from the crowd. Dana smiled, but her eyes grew serious. "I'm here to talk about what Axel, Scout, taught me about redemption, grief, and the language of loyalty." She described the night Axel appeared at the firehouse, how his arrival felt like a summons from the edge of despair. She spoke of Emily, lost and found, and Marissa Caldwell, finally brought home after years of silence. The details came slowly at first, but as Dana found her rhythm, she felt her story lifting and settling into the room, a tapestry woven of pain and hope. "Grief," she said, "has a scent. You can't see it or always name it, but you know when it's in the air. And dogs, they never forget it. They track it, they hold on to it, sometimes for years. Axel wasn't searching for victims. He was searching for meaning, for connection, for a promise he couldn't leave behind." Dana paused, looking down at Scout. who gazed up at her with eyes both ancient and innocent. She felt the weight of every sleepless night, every missed opportunity, every small mercy won by stubbornness and luck. In our world, we're quick to label trauma survivors as broken. We give them diagnoses, offer them tools, but we don't always make space for the ways people heal that don't fit inside a checklist. Axel didn't heal by forgetting. He healed by carrying his pain forward, by making it his purpose. She told the audience about her sister, about the old compass buried with Mauricia, and about the moment she realized that her own scars would never disappear. I wanted so badly to leave it all behind. But Axel, Scout, reminded me that we don't move on from grief. We move with it. We let it shape us, not break us. As Dana spoke, she saw people wiping tears, hands clutching tissues, heads nodding in quiet understanding. She shared how Scout flinched at certain sounds, how he guarded Emily like a shadow, how sometimes he would simply sit beside her, silent and watchful, refusing to leave when the nightmares came. She recalled one night, not long after everything had settled, when she found Scout at the window, staring into the darkness. She sat beside him, and together they listened to the night, neither needing words. Healing, Dana said, isn't loud. It's not always about big gestures or perfect endings. Sometimes it's about showing up. Sometimes it's about refusing to stop searching, even when everyone else gives up. Dana looked up, her gaze sweeping the room. True redemption isn't about undoing the past. It's about carrying it with grace and transforming it into purpose. Axel, Scout, didn't just save lives. He taught us how to live with scars, visible or not. He reminded me, and so many others, that hope can be silent, that loyalty can outlast violence, and that every survivor deserves to be heard, even when they can't find the words. There was a hush in the ballroom as Dana finished, the kind of silence that's full of meaning and memory. Scout rose, shaking himself and patting closer to Dana, pressing against her leg. The applause started slow, then grew, thunderous and heartfelt. People rose to their feet, some making their way forward to thank Dana, to stroke Scout's fur, to share their own stories of loss and hard-won hope. Later, in a quiet corner, a woman approached with tears in her eyes. My son was lost for 3 days in the woods last year. He's home now, but he still doesn't talk about it. Your story, it gives me hope that maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe we just have to be there for him, like you were for Scout. Dana smiled through her own tears. Sometimes the best thing we can do is wait to let them come back in their own time. As evening settled, Dana and Scout walked along the river outside the conference center, the city lights flickering on the water. Dana felt lighter, steadier. The scars were still there, hers, Scout's, Emily's, Marissa's memory. But so was the knowledge that they had become more than just reminders of pain. They were proof of survival, of meaning found in the aftermath. Back home, the stories about Scout continued to spread. His tale was read in classrooms, told at dinner tables, shared at support groups, and in hospital waiting rooms. People who had lost hope found in him a reason to believe that no journey was ever truly finished, no pain ever truly in vain. Emily's mother started a group for trauma families, using Scout as a symbol of resilience. The firehouse received letters and drawings from across the country, pictures of dogs, of lost loved ones, of people learning to hope again. Scout, for his part, cared little for the fame. He found comfort in routine, in Dana's steady presence, Emily's laughter, and the simple act of lying in the sun. But his story lingered, changing the way people saw their own pain, the way they spoke about healing, and the way they loved the broken, silent heroes in their own lives. Dana ended her keynote with a single thought: we can't erase what's happened to us, but we can choose what we do with it. Let your scars teach you loyalty, teach you patience, teach you hope. And when words fail, just listen. Sometimes the quietest ones are the bravest. As the crowd filed out, Dana knelt by Scout, hugging him close. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling the peace that came not from forgetting, but from finally being understood. Years slipped by, but the memory of that night in the woods, of desperate barking, muddy footprints, and the quiet heroism of a battered dog, never faded from the little town. Time had not erased the scars, but it had transformed them, growing something new in their place: a garden, a path, a legacy that reached far beyond the boundaries of Fire Station 12. On the land behind the station, where the forest once loomed heavy with secrets, a quiet memorial garden bloomed each spring. It was a place built by many hands: firefighters, children, families, and those who'd felt the silent comfort of Scout's story. At the garden's heart stood a bronze statue, life-sized, crafted with exquisite care. It captured Scout in mid-stride, ears perked, muzzle lifted, one paw resting protectively atop a battered sneaker. A small plaque read, "Guardian, Survivor, Friend." Dana visited the garden almost every day. She'd sit on the bench beneath the old pine, running her fingers over the cold metal of the statue, letting the hush of wind and bird song fill the spaces where grief once howled. The first time she saw Emily return, now a teenager and tall for her age, carrying a stack of library books and a notebook, Dana felt tears threaten. Emily knelt by the statue, reading aloud. Sometimes stories of rescue, sometimes poems she'd written herself, sometimes just gentle conversations as if Scout might, somehow, still be listening. The garden became a place for others, too. On weekends, families who had adopted rescue dogs would gather here, letting their pets play among the flowers while children traced the names engraved on the winding path. Some left dog collars, old leashes, or crayon drawings tucked among the stones. Survivors of all kinds found quiet company beneath the leafy branches, comforted by the knowledge that loss could be honored, not hidden. Inside the firehouse, a framed photo of Scout and Dana hung by the door, her hand on his head, his eyes steady and kind. New recruits always asked about him, and the older firefighters would smile, launching into stories about the stubborn dog who'd run headlong into danger and the woman who'd followed him. Scout's old badge rested in a glass case, along with Marissa's recovered K9 tag and the silver compass that had once guided Dana through her darkest days. But the legacy reached further. Dana, with Luis and Emily's help, founded a nonprofit called Guardian's Path, pairing rescue dogs with first responders and survivors across the region. Each partnership began with a walk down Axel's Trail, where Dana would share Scout's story, its pain and triumph, its messiness and hope. The organization grew, drawing volunteers, trainers, and donors from towns near and far. Dana mentored new handlers, reminding them always that the greatest strength sometimes lived in the quietest, most wounded hearts. Each year, on the anniversary of Emily's rescue, the town gathered in the garden for a candlelight vigil. Emily often spoke, her voice strong and clear, sharing how the dog who'd saved her taught her to believe in safety again. Claire would come too, now working as a counselor for survivors. They'd invite families to tell their stories, to light a candle, not only for what was lost, but for what was found. The power of persistence, the promise of redemption, the possibility that even the most broken can heal. One summer morning, a new family arrived at the firehouse, carrying a shy, trembling pup with wary eyes. Dana knelt and reached out her hand, waiting patiently until the dog came closer. She smiled, repeating the first words she'd ever spoken to Scout all those years ago. "We'll figure this out. Together." Emily, now a volunteer, beamed. Every dog has a story. Every person does too. Sometimes you just have to listen. Dana looked around at the garden, the new faces, the laughter, and the hush, and felt that gentle ache, the one that meant something precious had been both lost and found. She pressed her palm to the cold bronze of Scout's paw and whispered, "Thank you, old friend." A news team arrived that afternoon to film a feature about the program. As the reporter packed up her equipment, she turned to Dana. "What do you hope people will take away from all of this?" Dana glanced at Emily, at the other families, at the statue shining in the late sun. She took a breath, choosing her words with care. If Axel's story reached your heart, take a step. Volunteer, foster, donate. Let your silence become someone else's rescue. The world doesn't change because of a single hero. It changes because we show up again and again for each other. Some heroes don't bark. They wait, quietly, until someone listens. That evening, as dusk fell and the last visitors left the garden, Dana walked the trail alone. The leaves rustled softly, golden light filtering through the branches. She felt Scout's presence everywhere, not as a ghost, but as a promise that hope, once kindled, could never be truly lost. At the edge of the garden, Dana turned back for a final look. Emily sat by the statue, reading her newest story. The shy rescue pup curled beside her, head on her knee, listening. The scene felt both familiar and new, another beginning, woven from all that had come before. And so the legacy continued, not in thunder or fame, but in 100 quiet acts of courage and care, in the garden's peace, in the laughter of children, in the soft touch of a hand or the wag of a tail, in the story that started with a single, desperate bark in the dark and grew, leaf by leaf, into something enduring.